looking at minivans today. This is going to be the first segment, considering they essentially invented the segment. They made it popular. Mazda did it first with the MPV, even though it technically wasn't a minivan, but it was, and a lot of people give them credit, even though it wasn't a minivan. Yada, 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 yada. Essentially, the Dodge Caravan was released in the late 80s. We're talking 1988, 1989, I believe. The Mazda MPV was released in 1988. Overall, just a very nice car, but we're not here to talk about this. Remember, I like to focus on, if you're buying the car, right? Not when it was, back when I was younger. No, we're talking, old. We're talking, newer cars that you can actually, buy reasonably. 1995, you just had this standard model. Wasn't really bad, wasn't really great. Then in 2000, dual-sided doors, pretty much the only change. These vans were... they were reliable, but they weren't reliable. You know what I mean? They were good. They could drive a really long time, but they weren't really safe in an accident. And they weren't really the best on fuel economy, considering they were gigantic. And get ready for the carp. Yeah, the Dodge had this big, gigantic, unpainted plastic bumper because it's got to look cheap somehow, More expensive cars get chrome, cheaper cars get plastic. And so it just looked like a carp to me. That's why I just call it the carp car. Not bad. You can also see the two afterthought vents here. That face there. Yeah. Also, the, classical styling of... this is kind of how Chrysler does things. They just kind of mold things together. Anyway, the first actual year that you would consider buying this, 2007. This was the previous model year generation. Went from 2001 to 2007. Very good model. I actually drove in one of these. This was my great-grandparents' car. Yes, very, very fun. It was nice to sit in. It wasn't very bad, although it did make a lot of noise. And plus, these are very cheap. Some of these are still on the road, but it's very rare to see one. And of course, you had the Dodge. Now, this was the first time that Dodge would really, make any real changes. They had an SRT version, which was fun with these wheels. And then on the inside, you got... does this have it? Yeah. Faux carbon fiber on the SRT models with the weird... that doesn't match that, and that doesn't match that, and it certainly doesn't match that. I don't know what this is supposed to match. It just looks out of place. Anyway, yeah, if you got the SRT version, you got the things. If you got the regular version, you got unpainted plastic. Very interesting. I actually rented one of these recently. I bought a TV and I needed a car. You could also get a screen version. Remember, the Dodge wasn't really the fancy version, so that's very interesting to see. Very good vans. Anyway, we're moving into the first year. This is the 2008 model. This was really the last generation. So I'm going to discover why it was the last generation, and why the Chrysler Town & Country didn't keep going after this. But yeah, so essentially, this car wasn't bad, right? It was okay. The interior was great. You had LEDs there, dual things. It had all the latest tech. It was a very well-designed, very cool car. Of course, you had your standard radio, your screen, dual-zone climate control, then your, DVD player down there. Just a very nice car. The Dodge Grand Caravan wasn't really in its own yet. Again, every single generation, they just mimic, if it's a new generation, this was kind of old school, so Dodge could kind of change it and make it their own. This was undiscovered land with the new technology, so they just kind of stuck by Chrysler's side. Although the only real difference, when you actually look at it, between the Chrysler and this is that the Dodge Grand Caravan just had a weird little cubby hole where the clock would be, and then more buttons down there. That's it. That's the only difference. Other than that, the cars are identical. Yes, they had different trim levels. Yes, you were more likely to get a radio than a screen on this one. The interior was a little bit more plasticky. Other than that, they were pretty similar. A lot of disabled care houses actually use these. This is why they're so expensive a lot of times. Also, they're good for cheap camping if you don't want something really reliable. But just because they're so incredibly cheap, a lot of disabled homes, where they care for them, use these. They buy hundreds of them in fleets, or at least they did. So that's why they're selling them now and then buying Toyotas or something a little bit more reliable, a little bit more inexpensive than these. And that's why you're seeing so many of these for sale for such cheap prices. They bought them in 2008 in gigantic fleets, and because they're easy to convert. A lot of vans, the frame is really kind of sucky to do a conversion. These are really good, which is why you're just going to see a lot of handicap vans. So they stopped being made in 2016. I personally really like the look of the Chrysler. If I ever become a father, I want to be a minivan dad. You know, where I have my minivan and then all the other boring, lame-ass dads, we all like, congregate in the park. And then I'm like, oh, well, my minivan has heated seats. Yeah, well, my minivan's a better color. You know, like that. I would totally drive a black Town & Country. This is, like, my spirit car. Just because I like minivans. When I was growing up, I'm talking every single family on the block in rural Florida had one of these damn vans. And they weren't bad. They were just fine. They were just kind of, they were okay. The only real changes that they made, dual zone climate control was moved up a little bit. You had a silver ring. The clock looked okay, nice. You had the vents there. You had the screen, you know, your weird little shifter there that was just kind of out of place. This was the last year that they would stop making it, and Dodge tried to make, like, you could either get a really cheap Dodge, or, like, what they went for was, like, fast, like, fancy Dodge, although it didn't really work out for them, like, with these, the STX, the SXT, just, okay, you know, the Dodge, again, the only real difference was the clock, and you can still see the framing where the clock would have gone, with single zone, still dual zone climate controls, but you don't get a screen, just petty crap to make them slightly cheaper. Again, like I said, you're going to see a lot of these converted, just because they're really easy to do. So, why did they stop making it after 2016? If you're hearing this right, this was a top seller for Chrysler, this was a top seller for Dodge, and all they needed to do was refresh it, and sales weren't slipping. So why did it stop being sold? Well, you may have seen in my previous video, the IIHS decided that they wanted to start caring a little bit more than they did before, which was an issue if your car hasn't been redesigned since 2007. The Chrysler already had the Pacifica, and since, you know, Stellantis purchase was going on the way, Dodge would be transformed from its budget brand self into a new sporty kind of car company. That's why they did whatever this is supposed to be to the Dodge Grand Caravan to make it look more sporty, right? So the Dodge wouldn't be getting this new Chrysler minivan, only Chrysler would be getting it, which is very unfortunate. But because of those no IHS standards, the crash test happened, which was the small front overlap crash test. It intruded too much into the cabin. It's not like the IHS is a government facility. It's actually funded by insurance companies. It's actually quite unique. You can watch speeches about the NHTSA, which is a government-funded agency, talking about the IHS in such a gleaming manner, just because the IHS has more funding. The other one has the government, but the IHS has more funding because it's all the insurance companies that have more money, right, just to spend on this, right? The government doesn't like to blow a lot of money on car safety research and development. You know, just nice overall. The IHS does a lot of the work, and then the NHTSA just kind of follows the results and piggybacks off of them. You know, a lot of the tests that IHS did 20 years ago, the NHTSA is just getting around to, right? But the NHTSA can legislation. They were the ones that canceled pop-up up and down headlights. They're the ones that let the Cybertruck on the road. You know, I mean, they're kind of shady. And they're the ones that let Hyundai get away with having their taillights in a movable piece of plastic. You know, just weird crap. The IHS is more, you know, caring. They care if the cars are safe or not. The NHTSA just wants to get money, get paid, get home. That's it. So they stopped making these just because A, they didn't want to redesign it. B, it was looking old at this point. C, minivans were going out of style and an old name wasn't really something they were looking forward to. And B, it just wasn't really a reliable, good car. They needed something to refresh it. So let's talk about buying used. This is the 2012 Dodge Caravan SXT. We can see, of course, it's been converted. I always thought these wheels looked really nice, and they're surprisingly good for, like, I know you're never going to take this off-road, but if you did, very good approach and decline angles, for a minivan at least. That's probably just the conversion speaking. Very nice. Of course, you have some storage space over there. You know, your Prindle shifter down there. Overall, just pretty nice. Just your standard Dodge van with the cloth seats that no one really liked. You know, didn't really matter. Just okay. Fine van, wheelchair accessible. That's what a lot of these have been converted into. Unless you have like a wheelchair converted person, I wouldn't buy one of these just because, remember, a lot of disabled people don't have the money. I'm not getting all soft on you, squishy, it'll warm your heart this Christmas season. I'm just saying a lot of disabled people don't have money to spend, like big money to spend on wheelchair conversion vans. Don't buy one of these thinking you're going to, take it for your family or have extra room for your dog. Disabled people need these, especially when they're older, for $6,500. a lot of them are just being price gouged, which is, a thing made up by a certain person to decrease inflation, which would ultimately increase inflation. Anyway, yeah, a lot of these vans are really expensive. So the cheaper ones, it's good. That's the only reason why the Dodge Grand Caravan is still popular. This is again, another XXT, but this is when they changed the wheels to make it look more sporty and added more chrome. Remember, they're trying to bring Dodge out of their nice, good, affordable cars era and into their pretending to be sporty but still kind of cheap, crappy cars era. Just kind of okay, this is, again, another 2016 with the base wheel covers. Not very bad, just a standard car. There's not really much to say about it. Just a standard Dodge van. This is the 2008 Toyota. I'm so used to saying that. Chrysler Town & Country. I personally never rode in one of these. I believe my friend's family had one, and then it got stolen. Womp womp. But, yeah, not bad. Good cars, good vans. They're somewhat reliable. Remember, minivans, it's either hit or miss with these. They can be okay. The fold flat seats are also really, really nice. And the Chrysler Town & Country Touring, which is also, again, a very nice car. This is the 2013. Black with the wood accents. This is the one I would personally drive. Not very bad. Again, cheap, $5,000 2015. The only real thing that I wouldn't buy this for is the safety. If you're buying a family vehicle, you want it to be safe. I wouldn't want to lose any member of my family in the driver's seat just because it has a poor crash safety rating. So I wouldn't personally buy one of these. Remember, only like 5% of accidents actually happen that way, so you would be okay, exceptionally safe if you buy this vehicle. I would just kind of avoid it. Oh, and there's I'm pulling an apple here. There's something in the air of shit because this is the Volkswagen Rootin'. I'm just including this with the Chrysler vans because it's a Chrysler. Essentially, Volkswagen does things when they want to, like the Golf. In the 1970s, they cooked up a stew so good that everyone would want some, and they knew that they had something good. Other times, they pull a GM where they just want to get in the segment, like with the Equinox. They did a video on that. They want to get into that car segment, but they don't really want to. So, of course, they asked Chrysler and Dodge, pleaded with them very well, and said, please, may we have your minivan? It doesn't have fold flat seats, which makes it ultimately inferior, and it has the safety issues, which ultimately makes it inferior. So, yeah, I would just buy a Chrysler or a Dodge. These can be really cheap, although they're more expensive now just because they're rare. The interior is so weird. Like, they changed the shifter, and they changed the dashboard, and yet it looks more like a Chrysler than the Chrysler did, Like, the other one had the round shifter, and it had the normal gauge cluster. They made it the shitty chrome, like, ugh. Like, why would they do that? It looks more like a Chrysler and less like a Volkswagen, It just looks weird. The vents are nice. I do like that change. I do overall like the interior better. You're never going to see one of these on the road. You're going to have to go looking for them. And, of course, they have the shitty Dodge key start thing. These break off all the time. They're just piles of shit. And my favorite thing about this was around the same time, they also had the Sharon, which was another minivan. And remember, the Sharon's been around forever. So rather than just bring this dustbuster van to the US, they decided to just, oh, I love that. These wheels were on every single car. Jetta, Golf, Sharon. Yep. They already had their own minivan. They just didn't want to bring it to the US for cheap reasons. So they used this. So, yeah, that's pretty much the end of Chrysler. Oh, wait, no, I forgot about that. This is one of the most annoying cars. It's just bad. It's just arguably not a good car. So they replaced this. They thought it was going to be like trendy, like the tech forward minivan. In a lot of ways, the Pacifica started the modern minivan craze. The new Sienna, the new Odyssey, they're all battling it out. This started that. Because what it did was it changed the minivan from a family transporter to like a plastic, cheap, Chinese type looking ugly thing. I do think the original version looks better. Right now, they had to update it, right? This was a company that has no idea what it's doing on a regular day, much less when they have to actually update a car because it's the only one left that they're actually still selling. So they were 100% forced to update it, and so they went about this perfectly and executed it perfectly by making it worse. I think this is 100% more ugly than the nice. It flowed before, nice and flowed. Remember, me saying anything nice about a Chrysler design is very nice for me, They made it much, much worse. And also, their solution for Dodge was to bring back the Chrysler Voyager. It was the cheaper trims of the Town & Country were called the Chrysler Voyager. The essentially, I'm just going to explain it in just words. Plymouth, Dodge, not a Plymouth, but also not a Dodge, but it's its own model, but it's not. Essentially, to make up for the lack of the Dodge, they bought the Voyager back, which was essentially just a cheaper Pacifica. It had a cheaper interior. There was not really any other difference. I mean, they were just sold differently in different areas. It was either a Voyager or a Pacifica. The Pacifica was the nice one. The Voyager was the crappy one. Neither of them mattered. They both sucked equally. That's essentially all I have to say about this minivan. So, yeah. Now on to the actually good minivans. Oh my god. Finally. Good minivans. Reliable, decent, somewhat usable. This is the 2000 Toyota Sienna, which was released in 1995, and this is the 2000 Honda Odyssey. Now, this is the latest generation. I'm going to explain it. So, a lot of people like to think that these were the two minivans, the initial minivan words, the Japanese ones. It was actually Previa versus Odyssey. Neither of them took the L. The Previa was just way too weird. I mean, it was like the Dustbuster vans before GM even thought of that idea. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't great, and the Odyssey wasn't even a minivan with those weird doors, so people didn't really classify it in the same class. It was more of an MPV, right? Just, again, not very bad. The Mazda MPV will not be included in this list just because I already did a video on it, and you can, be lazy, or you can watch the entire other video that I made on it. So, yeah, this was essentially the first wars. Each generation, the Honda Odyssey and Toyota Sienna, they're either best friends, depending on how you look at it, or each other's worst enemies. So, let's move on to the next war. Neither of them won in the first EV, the first minivan war. This was the second one. This was a highly improved Toyota Sienna. I mean, beautiful, perfect, reliable, great, and it had a perpetual yay. Those happy sounds where you're not actually saying anything, but it just, you just sound happy. That's what this, it looks like, it's on NyQuil, and it's, really tripping very, very hard right now. And it's on NyQuil. I wonder if I can float on the ceiling. That's what this one looks like. Not very bad. I am in Portugal because I am in Portugal because I actually grew up with this minivan. Great, I loved it. Those are the weirdest wheels I've ever seen on them, but overall, just very nice fans. I love them. The interiors are great. I would definitely pick this Honda over that Toyota. The Toyota was just kind of bland and boring. So, it's 2010, both the minivans are old. They need an update, right? The Sienna hasn't been updated in forever, and the Odyssey is starting to look ancient, especially with their attempt at technology being awful wood and an even worse stereo system. So they came out with this. Now, I like the Honda Odyssey styling a little bit better, but the Sienna was just a better van. The interior was so much better than the Odyssey, which was just kind of like, yeah. It wasn't like a bad van. Like, these were both extremely reliable, extremely good, dedicated vans. They just weren't great. I would definitely go with the Toyota here. Standard radio, if you got the standard model. Nice wood. I actually thought that accent was nice. Of course, you have extra storage over there. This was when minivans hit their peak, and no one cared because no one was buying them anymore. Honda did whatever this is supposed to be with the gremlin face right there, like the movie, the gigantic thing. It didn't really make sense. Not bad. 2015, Toyota updated the Sienna. Can't you tell? No, the actual update was in the interior. Holy, was it great. I only sat in this minivan with this interior for 2 minutes, and I said, wow, that's the best Sienna ever. Totally buy this with these, and the reclining rear seats, mwah, magnifique. And the fold flat rear seats, mwah, magnifique. Best minivan you can ever buy is that generation. Honda, so, isn't there just like the devil in disguise? There are cars that you like, where you know that there are better options out there, but there's just something about that car that pulls you towards it. It's those wheels. Oh my god, are they fantastic. The Honda Odyssey's always had better wheels than the Sienna, but those are so much better. Oh my gosh, they're so perfect. Meanwhile, the Sienna had, like, what I would describe to be, like, flower whatevers. Not attractive, not very nice. They didn't stand up very well. These look much more luxurious and much better, much nicer. They updated the Sienna again in 2019. The outside really just got this more closed-nosed Toyota design rather than the big, gigantic, wide grille before. Like they used to have like the small little grille down there and then the big grille up there. Now the big grille's down there and the small little weedy thing is up there. Not very bad. 2020 Odyssey got updated. Don't talk to me about the interior. It's painful to look at. It hurts my eyes. It hurts. That parking thing is awful. This is why I hate it. I would never buy that van. The Sienna's so much better. You have an actual shifter that actually is connected to something that you actually shift. Oh my god, wow, Honda, can't figure that out. Huh, can we? Perfect, great to drive, the interior is amazing. It's a hybrid, get good gas mileage. Again, these cheaper Toyotas, they're just perfect. I'm just running through this. Essentially, with the Chryslers and Dodges, I spend about half the time elaborating just what piles of crap they are. I don't have to do that here. I can just like show you some photos, say ma 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 ma, ma, and then move on to the next one. Again, very nice. You can just see that happy, like, spaced out vibe face right there. You have little storage underneath the doors by flipping those up. Just overall a very nice vehicle, of course. I would get some new hubcaps for this one, maybe vacuum it, all the mysterious substances. This is the 2012, so pre-facelift, pre-interior update. And again, the interior isn't bad. There's just a way better interior ahead of it. You know, when things are, outshined. This thing looks very weird because it's wide, but it's because you can actually fit two. Like, you can either have one playing or two movies playing at the same time with the headsets. So, very nice. This is the one that I would buy. This is, in fact, not an LE. This is like an XLE. But, yeah, this is the 2019 Toyota Sienna. You can see your in-tune system. It's got everything you need. It's got everything you could ever want. It's perfect. It's elegant. It's a pure frick Toyota. It's so reliable. You're not even going to know what hit ya. Perfect. I grew up with this exact Odyssey. Except mine was gold. It was... No, red. Mine was red. Oh, my God. My memory is fading. Yeah, Odyssey. Yep, it's fun, even though there's supposed to be a Y there, but, it's fine. These hubcaps are terrible. They constantly fall off, but the interior is just so great. I cannot tell you how many times we were driving down the thing. Oh, I love the stupidest part. There's a cassette player, and it takes up all this space. Ours was so cheap, we just had a flap there. And behind the flap was just the dashboard. That's just how cheap ours was. Again, not very bad. We love this thing. You had the space there. You press that in, and the entire thing folded down. Maps went in there back when we still used maps. The most reliable car I've ever owned. I loved it. It was great. I didn't end up inheriting it. They stopped it at a drive-thru, and it didn't start again. And she was dead. The alternator, we had known that it was been rotting. Florida, of course. It was a sad day. This is the 2011 Honda Odyssey Touring. A little bit of silver in there. Just not, I like that, it's not bad. It's very nice. This is the Elite. No, just Touring. No Elite. Very nice. Of course, you have your leather interior, your 100-volt wide rear entertainment system. Then, of course, you have your, standard gremlin, buttony Honda interior. Nice and retro and hideous. This is the newer one, the 2013. Again, not bad. The interior didn't really get any main changes, except you got more chrome this time instead of the little lines of red. Overall, just very good. This is pretty much all there is to minivans. They're all exceptionally great.